Welcome back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundi, we've had some news around the week, but it hasn't been a massive week so far.
No, not really. We got a couple trades that took place. Couple huge trade rumors. Um, I think this is our last episode we've got before the trade deadline. Maybe barring anything crazy that happens over the weekend or early next week, we might come out with something before the trade deadline during next week. But yeah, we got a lot of trade deadline news to cover here.
Yeah, and we kind of knew going into this that it would be a bit of a quieter trade deadline, most likely. There's not a lot of guys on expiring deals that look to be shopped, and a couple
Yeah,
that were, the Elias Lindholm trade and such. They already happened. So for like almost a month before the deadline. So we we were kind of prepared for this. So luckily we've got a couple mock trades as well as news around the league to cover.
yeah, that we do. Where do we want to start here?
Let's start with some of the news around the league. I don't have a ton to add to this one, but the Arizona Coyotes are on a 14 game losing streak.
Yeah, they went the entire month of February without a win. They went 12-2.
Yeah, and
Brutal.
it's not exactly unexpected, but the way they were playing, you definitely would have figured they would have put together a bit more than that. They've
Well, I mean, like
got really slowed down.
mid January, we were talking about the kind of playoff race and how exciting it's going to be, and they were right in there fighting for those wild card spots, and now they're so far out of it. Like they're not making the playoffs now, obviously.
Yeah, they're 19 points out of playoff spot now.
Yeah, not only that, they're fifth last in the entire league. So once again, it's this kind of feels like something we've seen from the Coyotes. It's they start the season off fairly strong, and they're kind of in there, and then all of a sudden, just a horrendous collapse, and now they're picking top 5 again, most likely.
Yeah, and we can talk. We'll talk probably a little bit more about the standings later, but that Western Conference wildcard situation is kind of nuts. They've
Yeah,
all of a sudden Nashville's on a 7-game win streak and they're in. Calgary's on a 4-game win streak behind them, so they're looking to get in. And St. Louis, who not too long ago was on a 7 or 8-game win streak, they've lost 3 in a row, and they're kind of looking to be on the downswing. It's really weird over there, but the gap between wildcard teams and not is looking to get only bigger and bigger. So we'll see if it's still competitive by the end of the year.
yeah. It's going to be close. It's going to be a battle for a lot of teams right up until the final day. So it's going to be interesting to see, do some teams kind of take off and go on a great win streak, or do we see a team do what Arizona's doing and just completely fall apart and their season's now gone? It's going to be interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, and one team that they're 4-5-1 in their last 10, but they're pretty comfortably in a good spot is the Vegas Golden Knights, who just announced earlier this week that Mark Stone will be out for the rest. They said without a doubt he will be out for the rest of the regular season, but they're hopeful that he comes back for the playoffs.
Yeah, they said he could miss the playoffs. He could be back. We know what that means. He's out for the rest of the regular season. Game 1 of the playoffs, he's back and 100% healthy. Like they can word it whatever way they want. Any like diehard hockey fan who pays attention around the league knows this is what they do. It's the same thing every year, and it's always Mark Stone is the one who gets to take a little bit of extra rest, and I mean, I don't doubt that he's got injuries. We know he's got that lingering back injury, but the fact that it's every year, a week and a half before the trade deadline, it's like, oh, he's hurting out for the rest of the regular season, but we know he'll be back for game 1 of the playoffs. So
Yeah, and it's such a weird situation because I I know that he does have legitimate injuries, but I wonder because the way it's supposed to work is once a guy's healthy enough to play, you're supposed to activate him, but then he counts against the cap. But if they made a move at the deadline while he's on LTIR,
Hmm.
then obviously they wouldn't have the room. So they, I obviously he does have his injuries, but I wonder is it that he's healthy, assuming it does happen like that because it has in the past. Um, is he coming back from injury too early in the playoffs, or is he healthy earlier than he says and he's waiting out extra time?
I mean,
Because
the
I think
fact when he
those
shows
are
up and plays, yeah,
two very separate situations.
100%. But I think when you look at recent years, when he comes back and in for the playoffs, like he's immediate. Like it's not like they're sheltering his minutes or anything. It's not like he's only playing 13 to 15 minutes. He's going out there and playing 18, 19, maybe even 20 minutes. Like he's getting that full ice time. He's being used in all situations. Like to me, if a guy's coming back and a little bit earlier than he should, you don't you know use him as if he's fully healthy at the start of the regular season type of thing.
Yeah, and I didn't watch the first few games when he came back in past years. Um, the only thing I really have that can compare to this, right, is when Kucherov came back after he missed uh basically the entire year. It might have actually been the entire year of
He missed the whole regular season.
yeah, the one year he had his I think it was back surgery.
Something like
Um
that, yeah. I can't
yeah,
remember exactly.
and he was out, and notoriously when he came back, uh, I believe in the first round that year we played Florida, and he put up I think it was 2 goals and 1 assist in that first game. Uh, but he did not like. It's funny because he put up insane numbers, right? But he did not look like himself. Like
Yeah, he did not
because
look good.
he's got such good IQ, hockey IQ, and a good shot and stuff. But like I remember in that game there was one point where I think it was Hedman sprung him for a breakaway, and like legitimately he got caught up to on that breakaway. If Pat Maroon had that, he would have been in all alone. It was like holy
Yeah.
fuck, he is not 100% yet.
Yeah.
Luckily, he could just do so much work on the power play. But
Yeah, exactly, right?
when the guy comes back and it's like he can't I can't make it for game 82. I'm not ready. And then half a week later he comes back and he's playing huge minutes and he's looks like he hasn't missed a step. It's definitely sketchy.
Yeah. And talking about Vegas and obviously moving Mark Stone to LTR, they are one of the teams that we'll discuss a little bit about in one of the mock trades we have later on.
All right.
So that will come back into play at some point.
Before we get to that, we have a couple of trades to go through. Do you have a preference on which one we go through first here?
Yeah, so we'll do the bottom one of the two we have here first because I believe that
Okay.
the second one is a result of the first one. So if you want to
That's very fair.
break it down for us here.
Yep, we got Chris Tanev was acquired by the Dallas Stars a couple nights ago from the Calgary Flames. Uh, this was a 3-team trade that also involved the New Jersey Devils. Calgary acquired defensive prospect Artem Grushnikov and the Dallas Stars' second round pick in 2024 and a conditional third round pick in 2026. I believe the condition is that the Stars have to make the finals this year.
Yeah, they have to make the Stanley Cup final for Calgary to get that third rounder.
Yeah, and of course, New Jersey received Dallas's fourth round pick in the 2026 draft for their troubles. I believe Calgary retained 50
50
50% on this, and then New Jersey retained a 50%
of
uh,
the remaining.
of the remaining. So 25% of his overall salary. So the
It's just a little
Stars
over a
have
million
the
in
Stars
total
have
now.
Tanev for 25% of his cap hit, which is pretty
Yeah.
sweet for them.
Yeah, no, it's a great deal for Dallas because I mean, obviously, they needed help on the right end of their blue line. Chris Tanev was obviously the best right-handed defenseman available at the deadline, or at least of the players who were presumed to be available. Obviously, they could have went out and got a higher profile guy and gave up way more.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tanev fits exactly what Dallas needs, and then to get him only coming in now at a little over $1 million, that still gives them decent amount of cap space to go out and make another move. There's not a whole lot of truth to it, but there is rumors that they have been looking around Philadelphia with Nick Seeler and with Anaheim about Radko Gudas. So it doesn't sound like Dallas is completely done yet with adding to their blue line. And I mean, and that's a big part of why they, gave up an extra pick to have New Jersey retain. Like it was about $1 million that New Jersey retained there.
Which
And
is
then
interesting
Calgary.
that New Jersey's done that, because a lot of people thought New Jersey was going to go out and spend a ton of futures to go get guys to really build up for the playoff run this year, and it's kind of looking like they're maybe kicking it to next year or something with this, giving themselves that much less cap space to work with.
Yeah. Like New Jersey's a weird one, right? Because when you look at it, it's like, okay, yeah, like really they do have I'm just trying to find here how much cap space they have, because they do have a decent amount. Like they have 8.3 million in cap space right now, and that's after already retaining that. So they still have a decent amount to work with.
Is any of that LTIR money? Like, do they have somebody who, if they came back, they would have way less?
Yeah, they have Dougie Hamilton LTIR who's making 9, but I don't think he's coming back at all this year.
Well,
And if he does, it would be playoffs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I guess he can't now for the regular season if he's,
well, they would just send down one of their 8 defensemen
I guess
they have.
Yeah, that's true.
Like it. The thing I don't fully understand is, like, I know a lot of people are, when talking about New Jersey, is like, yeah, you know what, this year's not in the cards. Kick the can down the road till next year, and then go all in next year. The issue is, though, is at the end of this year, like, it sounds like they're going to re-sign Toffoli. And I'm assuming Toffoli probably gets a little bit of a pay upgrade from like the $4 million he's making right now.
I doubt he's taking less at the least.
Yeah. And then also on top of that, you've got, guys like Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec on their entry-level deals. Next year is the final year of Luke Hughes' deal. And once that's up, he's going to be getting paid more. So I feel like they really need
think
to
they want to give him a bridge either. They're not going to bridge him. They want 8 years, which means they're going to pay for him. He'll honestly, I definitely could see him taking the same exact deal Jack Hughes got.
Yeah,
but
which is kind of what
that's
I think
a lot more than his entry level deal.
Yeah.
So
it's an extra $8 million right there on your books now.
They need to win sooner rather than later. And I mean, that's just how it is for the majority of teams that are competitive, right? Like, it's hard to put together a Stanley Cup caliber team and be able to maintain that for a long time. So if you think you can go for it, I think you got to go for it, right?
You got to go for it when you've got $8 million available right now. You've got some great contracts that you're not going to have in a year or two. Like, this is the year that they should be trying to go for it. And again, I don't know if they will or whether they won't. So that's kind of an interesting team to keep an eye on. That New Jersey is another team that we'll be talking about a little bit later on with some of the mock trades we have.
Right.
And then, I mean, Calgary, I don't mind this deal for Calgary, a second round pick and I would say a decent defensive prospect. I think he was a 2021 second round pick. He's a a stay-at-home defensive defenseman who skates really well.
He is projected to make the NHL then, or
yeah, probably a 5 or 6 on the back end, I would say.
yeah, I mean it's something, and a second round pick, that's not bad. It's kind of weird because obviously, it would be nice to have that third round pick from Dallas, but if
Which
they
I
go to
think they very well might get.
but if Dallas goes to the finals, that means it's a bottom 2 pick in the second round. You'd
That
almost
is
rather
true.
that you'd almost rather not take that third round pick and have that second rounder be a 46 47 kind of spot in the overall in the second round.
Yeah,
You'd
that's
almost
true.
prefer a better second round pick. So at least they kind of set themselves up that if that's a disappointment, they'll get the third rounder. So it's
Mhm.
kind of a win-win if you look at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, like I love this deal for Dallas. I think it fills the hole that they desperately need. I don't think they really gave up anything that was a part of their future. Grishnikov, I don't like. Again, he's probably going to end up being a bottom pairing guy, but I really don't think he would have fit in with Dallas's plans. Second round pick. If you're getting Tanev, that second round pick means nothing to you. For Calgary, I think they really went for quantity over quality. I think that
Yeah.
we know that Edmonton had offered them uh, a first round pick and Cody Ceci for Chris Tanev, which was rejected by Calgary. And a lot of people are like, oh,
Was that recently?
yeah, it was before they made the deal with Dallas, I think like a couple days before. And people are
I had
very,
heard that nobody was giving them a first. So that's interesting. Because they
yeah,
wanted a first for Tanev, but
yeah.
I had heard that it wasn't out there. But I mean, it's Calgary, right? If the only team offering a first is the Oilers, I could definitely see them turning it down
Well, I don't
for
think
a
it's
deal
got anything
elsewhere.
to do with the fact that it was Edmonton. I think it's the fact that they didn't want to take on Cody Ceci, who
Yeah, that's
is
a
making
bit
a
of a
little
cap dump.
over.
You're
Yeah, he's
not getting
making
a proper player back as much.
yeah, like he's making a little over $3 million. He's been horrible this year, so he wouldn't provide any value to the Flames. So it's like, they might have done it if Edmonton's like, we'll give you a first, a prospect, and CC, or a first, a second CC, because I think the Edmonton would have to pay a little extra to offload Cody Ceci's contract. So,
Yeah, you're
and it
not
sounds like
getting two
Edmonton,
assets back. You're getting one asset, and essentially Calgary's giving you two assets, some cap
yeah,
space from CC and Tanev. So it would definitely make
exactly,
sense that they wouldn't take that trade.
exactly. But I mean, overall, I love this deal for Dallas. New Jersey, I mean, they're basically just paying $1 million to get a fourth round pick. All right, and then Calgary, I'm indifferent on. I think for a guy like Chris Tanev and what he does, I think if they held out,
I think they could have
till
gotten a
the
bit
deadline
more,
day,
but
yeah, I think they could have got a first from someone.
it's Calgary's been burned before. They waited too long, and deadline passes, and then now you're now you're
Yeah.
probably losing them for nothing. So you know what? I don't blame them for making this deal. It's not horrible. I think they could have got the first. I think it was out there, but uh,
Hmm.
yeah, you know what? They still got a second. They got a guy who's looking to be decent enough, and yeah, there's sometimes you're just kind of handcuffed a bit, and Calgary's no stranger to that. So I don't hate it
Yeah,
for him.
and that second round pick could easily be used to move up. If you're looking at it, a couple other guys we'll get into later on with the Flames. If they move them and get a first this year, you could package that second and that first on draft day and move up, a couple spots to get the guy that you want. So I
Yeah,
don't hate this deal for Calgary. I'm more on the side of I like it for them than I'm against it. But I really do think they could have held out and got the first. But like you said, they could have found themselves in a tricky spot if they did, where they maybe end up getting nothing. So
yeah, and I feel like a lot of Canadian teams, especially, namely the Torontos and the Calgarys, in the NHL. They seem to have a lot of issue with getting these guys into places that they'll allow themselves to go and teams want them, and they often seem to, a lot more than the American teams, lose these guys for nothing in free agency because they couldn't find the right deal. And
Yeah.
it's not the main reason, but like it's part of the reason that Canada has not had a Stanley Cup champion in what, 30 years, 31 years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Like
It's been a while.
it's tough to make those deals sometimes, and that does not help.
Yeah. So then obviously that was the first of the two trades. The second one actually just happened last night. Anaheim was set to face off against San Jose. Ilya Lyubushkin was in Dallas or in Anaheim's lineup, was pulled from their lineup just a bit before the game. So we're like, oh, there's probably a trade going on. And then sure enough, the news breaks that Ilya Lyubushkin has been traded back to Toronto, where he had played there a bit for the Maple Leafs a couple years ago. So the Maple Leafs got defenseman Ilya Lyubushkin from the Anaheim Ducks, and this was another 3-team trade that involved the Carolina Hurricanes. So the deal is that the Ducks retain 50% of Lyubushkin's salary and receives Toronto's 2025 third-round pick. And then the Hurricanes retained 25% of Lyubushkin's salary, and they received Toronto's 2024 sixth-round pick. And the Maple Leafs also received their rights to forward Kirill Slepets from the Hurricanes to complete the trade. So, I mean, again, Carolina, they're paying a little bit of money to buy a draft pick, same as what New Jersey did. Anaheim, obviously, sellers once again. I mean, I don't like this deal for Toronto. This is why I wanted to do the Tanev deal first, was because I believe Toronto missed out on Tanev, they went and settled for the next guy they could, and Lyubushkin has been awful this year. Like, I know he's on Anaheim, but like, you look at his advanced stats, he's been one of the worst defensemen in the league this season. So
yeah,
I don't love this move for Toronto.
He was fantastic when he was in Toronto in years past, because since this is him going back, and he was really good for them, but he was just a cap casualty. So it's I wonder how much of it is them kind of buying low, because they really did not give up much for this. Like, what overall did the Leafs give up for this? They gave up a 2025 third and a 2024 sixth. That's all they gave up, right?
Yeah.
Like, those are, I mean, the 6th round pick is basically nothing. And 2 years in the future, the 3rd round pick, that's like, yeah, for an NHL player, that's basically worth it. So it's, I think they could have got something better, but
easily could have.
You know what? Maybe their chance to get something better was in the off season before they got John Klingberg. So
yeah,
you know, I have a feeling that it might work out pretty well for them, just because it's a guy returning, and I feel like you just often see that works out for teams, but we really do not know until we see how it goes off. Something that's very similar to these two trades, and is very strange to me, is the Hurricanes are involved in this one and are retaining 25% of Lyubushkin's overall salary. The Hurricanes and the Devils, like, in the preseason, were like 2 of the top 3 teams in betting to win the Stanley Cup. Like, they were both right up there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were both heavy favorites this year. And
okay, but here's the thing, though.
Here's 2 teams that are now retaining on other competitors' salaries to make a playoff run.
Yeah, but Carolina is only retaining $687,000.
Yeah,
so like it's like they're not retaining like really anything. They've still got a little over $5 million in cap space. Like this doesn't affect Carolina whatsoever. They're just paying like $500,000 to get an extra draft pick that could even be used as to make a move at the deadline. And then New Jersey, like we said, they have so much cap space right now that $1 million for a 4th-round pick that they could potentially flip.
I definitely understand it more for New Jersey.
Yeah,
the Carolina one, it's a 6th-round pick, and it's a team playoff bound at that. Like that's so far down that like the pick is not worth very much, and it's more than anything, it's helping out a team in your conference that is strapped for cap space. So, and I'm sure if they didn't do it, another team would have.
Yeah, well, that's a thing. Like,
but
someone would have done it either way. So Carolina's like, we might as well get that draft pick rather than some other team getting it.
It's a very nothing part of the deal, but it's still a little confusing to me just with the situation, because they're not giving up much, but they're not getting really anything either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's a very good point for sure. Do we have much else on the board?
Not a ton to talk about this. I'm sick of talking about this guy, frankly, but there was a clip going around. I can't even remember who they were facing at this point, but it was a Panthers game, and somebody went up, and I think they just got their hands up in his face or something, and Nick Cousins,
almost like an uppercut.
Nick Cousins flopped backwards and spun, and he fell to the ice, and he was laying on the ice on his hands and knees, holding his face, and a big scrum breaks out in front of the net. And then Nick Cousins looks up, realizes his guys are getting shit canned, and he just hops up and sprints in there and starts throwing gloves too. And like, you do not see it, but I would have loved for him to get a single game suspension from this, just because it would send a message of like, and we've seen the refs before do this, just sending that message of like, don't you dare try and make us look fucking stupid. The refs hate when players, coaches, or organizations make them look stupid.
Yeah.
And so for this guy to sit there and like, he's holding his head and he's kicking his feet a little. He's looking like, oh man, I really just got hit in the face. He's a bully who hit me. And then he just pops up. He's like, I'm going to get in there. And he's like completely fine. He's completely fine afterwards. And I would have loved to see him get like a major for embellishment or something.
It's just like, a douchebag look on his end.
Yeah. I mean, he already looks like such a dick, but like, I think this, as much as it is him as well, it just would have been a nice opportunity to see the league or the refs just kind of be like, hey, just so everyone knows, we really do not like when you fake injuries like this. Because I'm sure it happens way more than we know. I'm sure there's a lot of guys who stay down and it's like, he's slow off the ice. That's rough. And then he's out there 5 minutes later. He's looking completely fine. And sometimes you get your bell rung and that's how it is. But I'm sure there's plenty of times where the guy goes down and goes, whether he planned it or not, he's like, I got to milk this a little bit now. I can't pop right up. And just the way Nick Cousins did it, it was like, it looked like a bit out of like a WWE match.
Yeah.
Like he looked like heel Randy Orton, like pretending to be injured, and then he pops up and Nick Cousins runs in and RKOs somebody. Like,
yeah.
So I'm surprised there wasn't more news on that, but also it's it's not like anyone was injured from it. I mean, the whole point is that nobody was. I would have enjoyed seeing the refs send a message to the league at Nick Cousins' expense.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see. I don't know if we ever will, but it's always something you'd hope to see a message get sent to him for doing that. But it just seems like Nick Cousins just can't get his shit together. So
yeah, and it's wild how ubiquitously he's hated across the league, and he's the most hated Panther in the league when this dude is on a team with some hockey bastards, man. Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, Lomberg, like, these are guys that opposing teams do not like facing. And Nick Cousins is on a completely other level than them in terms of shithousery. So
yeah, he can't figure it out. He cannot, no matter what anyone does to him. He's sticking to his game plan.
Yeah, and he doesn't need to. He hasn't been suspended or anything. He's takes some penalties, but not near as many as he should. And I'm sure he's drawing a ton.
Yeah.
So you'd like to see the refs spark that change a bit, but until they do, what he's doing is working.
Yeah, it's the thing, right? Like, as much as I dislike him and dislike what he does, it's working for him. So
yeah, and I don't mind the being a bit of a shit heel now and then. It's the dangerous plays more than anything, right? We had that one 3-week stretch earlier in the season where every podcast we did 3 or 4 in a row, it was just man, he fucking hammered somebody again, and it looked like they were going to be out for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see one of those get suspended, but I'm sure karma will come for him at one point or another, maybe in the playoffs.
At some point, it's going to, and I think it probably will in the playoffs when you're playing the same team, every second day, potentially for 7 games straight. If he keeps this up in the playoffs, whatever team they're up against, eventually someone is going to just have enough of them, and they're going to just take it into their own hands. So,
yeah, especially if he meets up with a team like the Rangers, where they got Trouba, they got what's that young kid who's just fighting every single game.
Yeah, Rempe, Calgary boy as well.
Oh, no fooling,
his face, man. Did you see the picture of his face during practice? Oh, just mashed in. Yeah, just a massive swollen black guy.
Is that after the fight with
I couldn't even tell you, man. He's just been in so many fights.
I think he got in a fight 4 games in a row. After his from his 3rd game in the NHL to his 6th or 7th, it was a fight a night. And the one against who is it on
Delorier?
The Flyers? Delorier,
yeah.
That's an all-time fight. You could upload a clip of that fight in 10 years and people will remember it. What a great scrap.
And here's the thing, though, and I know a lot of people disagree with it because they're like, oh, they love fighting in hockey and they like this. And don't get me wrong, I think fighting in the game is completely fine. But when you're a young kid like this, play hockey as well. And I mean, yeah, sure, he has a goal and assist and whatnot, sure. But to just go out there with the sole purpose of being I just got to go out there every single game and just fight the biggest guy out there. Eventually, and I mean, yeah, I'm not going to jump to specific players, but we've seen what the effects of fighting, just being a straight fighter, and that's your only mission on the ice, what it can do to some players. So, and I think he's great at what he does, but I'd like to see him. And I know he had 1 or 2 games here and there where he goes out there and just plays. He doesn't go out there and fight, which, I think is fine. But if you're looking at the paces on over a full 82 game season to have 60 fights, that's a bit absurd at that point. So
yeah, you almost want the league to step in and do something. I don't even know where to begin.
I don't think there's anything they could do.
But yeah, you obviously couldn't make a rule of if a guy fights, he can't fight next game or something, because then in the playoffs, a team would make a guy fight, and then they'd fuck around with his teammates in the second game, knowing that he'll get suspended if he does. So I don't know what they could do making a new rule, but
just to protect the player, because 1 week in the league and his face is just mashed in and whatnot. It's man, come on! You've been in the league for 6 games, and it looks like you've already been put through a wood chipper.
And as much as Gary Bettman wants to deny that it exists, CTE is a real thing, and all those hits, they add up, and we're starting to see, because 100 years ago there were professional sports, but They were much less aggressive, much less intense. It was coal miners who in their spare time played for the Montreal Canadiens and stuff. It was guys who didn't do it full time, and there was so much less money involved, so it was less of a big deal. Now that from like the 70s, 80s on, we're starting to see these guys who like their life was the game. We're starting to see some of them get old. There's a lot of them that are like dying in this 60 to 70-year range. And all the guys they played with are like, man, what a lucky duck. He survived that long because like it's hard to live too long when you've been hit in the head so many times.
Yeah, when you've got those brain injuries, it's
Yeah, you see it
yeah.
in like so many sports now, football players, hockey players, wrestlers, boxers, and like they're so few of them live as long as people should be, and even fewer of them have a quality of life if they get that long. Like,
Mhm.
so yeah, this how old is he? 21? Like,
I think he's a little bit older. I think he's like 23 or 24.
yeah, like I mean, realistically, any age, but especially a young guy, like you want to see somebody doing something to kind of, protect his future at this point a little bit.
Yeah. No, like 100%, like um you do. So yeah, so uh he's got 4 fights in his first 6 games. He's averaging a little under 5 minutes time on ice per game. So like say what you want, he's out there to be a fighter. Okay, he is 21 actually. He is 21.
Jeez,
Um
yeah.
but again, it's like, if it's someone like a Ryan Reeves, goes out there, just hits, gets under the other team's skin, and will fight when has to. But Ryan Reeves even doesn't go out there and just purposely be like, I'm going to fight every night, because he knows he doesn't have to. His job is to just be a shit disturber and step up when he needs to. He doesn't just go out there and be like, hey, you're a big tough guy. We're going to fight now. It's like, so I'd like to see Rempe maybe take on that approach of being a shit disturber, being a big, hard, heavy hitting power forward, because he's a big guy. And then it's like, if someone needs to step up and fight, or if Jacob Trouba throws an elbow right into someone's face like he loves to do, and then someone grabs Trouba, then Rempe can go in and fight or something. But
Yeah.
to just go out there and be like, my job is to go out there every night and
Yeah. There's a few
find the
games.
biggest guy and fight him.
There's
a
a few
little
games
much.
he's had where he's just like dropped the gloves at 19:59 left in the first period, and they're just going like that.
Yeah.
That's the whole game plan. And I liked what you said about you want to see these guys also play hockey. It would be really interesting if they could put some sort of rule in where like they pick, they use some sort of math analytics to pick what the average time should be, and like a player to be a player will get like an extra penalty or suspended or something if they fight without having an average of 7 or 8 minutes time on ice for that
Nah,
team.
you can't
like
do that.
like it's stupid. It's stupid having these guys who go out there and they play 2 minutes a night. They get like 1 or 2 shifts and they go out there and fight, and then they ride the bench the whole time.
Yeah, but you can't put a cap on stuff like that, though.
I think
Because
they
then
could.
you have to have 1,000 different subsections to that rule based on injuries and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and you could have
it
an
can't be like,
injury.
if you go out there and fight and get injured, it's like, well, you're suspended now because you didn't reach your thing, and then you go into, oh well, maybe he didn't reach that mark, but it's like, yeah, he got injured during his fight, so we didn't want to risk playing him, and they're like, so
I'm thinking of they use like the time on ice like average for that team for the year. Like not that game, because then nobody could fight in the first 5 minutes. But like if this guy has played 20 games for your team and averages 3 minutes a night, then he's like an ineligible fighter. But if he averages even 6.5 minutes or something, then maybe he is. And then maybe you also make an exemption of like, was the play stopped because some dude got headshot and then he went into fight, versus him fighting at the dropping his gloves at the face-off dot, I literally just came up with this. Like, this is not a NHL ready plan, but like, I think there's something that they could do to reduce the amount of guys who are only in the NHL to fight.
I
And like
think
you said, he's got a goal and an assist. I think he has enough skill that he could play,
well, that's
but
also the
you
thing,
hate to
right?
see him be
Is
delegated to this just boxer on skates.
well, which is exactly what it is, right? Like he's 21, he's just coming into the league. He's not getting an opportunity to actually really showcase his skill. It's you go out there and fight. In terms of that suspension thing, I just don't think that ever works. There's too many different things. I think, and I don't think this will ever happen. But I think the only kind of rule you could do that would make sense is be like you reach this amount of fighting majors in a season, you're suspended for this. If you keep fighting afterwards and you get to like if you have 10 in a season or something, be like, 1 or 2 game suspension. If you keep going and you get up to like 15, then X amount of games. And then something like that. Again, I don't think it'll ever happen, but I think that's kind of maybe the only
that would be a great way to do it, I think.
way they can go about it.
And then I'm sure they'd probably have different rules for it in the playoffs. They'd change the numbers around. They'd be less because there's less games in the playoffs, but it'd also probably be like it would probably be a higher percentage of games you can fight in because, they love that for playoffs hockey. But I think something like that could definitely work. Like just something to prevent guys from having like an insane amount of fights in a season. Like nobody should ever hit 30 or 25 fights in a season, like that's madness.
And especially when it's a kid who's 21 years old, he's still learning how to be an adult, to be a professional hockey player. His brain is still developing, and he's getting his face smashed in
like
every
another
night.
3-4 years. Like it's and just eating those punches upside the head
and again,
obviously
it's
that can happen from hits. That can, if he blocks a shot wrong, that can happen, but just because it can happen in other ways in the game doesn't mean we shouldn't try and protect the players a bit where we can.
Yeah. Because if like the season goes on like this, that's what his career would be. He would never, get the chance to be a middle six winger or something and just be a big, strong power forward who drives the net and maybe sits out front on the power play. It would be like, you're a fighter. That's your job. If you want to keep playing hockey in the NHL, you have to be a fighter. If this is all we can ever see from him, because eventually we're never going to get to actually see any of his skill. If it's you play 4 minutes a night and you sit in the penalty box for more time than you're actually on the ice, like it's just insane. Like if you played 8, 9, 10 minutes a night and fights, okay, sure. But like when you're spending more time in the penalty box every game than on the ice, helping your team try and win a game, it's like, I don't know. It's odd.
Yeah, I completely agree.
The only one I'll give him credit for is his very first NHL game, which was the Stadium Series against the Islanders, the outdoor game. First of all, what a cool game to have your first NHL game be in. Like he does his rookie lap outdoors in front of 80,000 people. Not many guys can say that. And his first shift he lined up, and obviously he lined up against Matt Martin. And it was Matt Martin who said, "Hey, kid, do you want to go?" Like Matt Martin challenged him to the fight. And I mean, when you're a big tough kid coming up and your first shift, you got a guy like Matt Martin asking you to fight, and you can go toe to toe with him. How are you going to pass something like that up in a game like that? So that must have been a pretty cool moment for him. I will say that.
Yeah, and like you said, like that game where he fought Delorier, he had a goal in that game. Not too much longer after that, so it'd be nice to see him get a little more time to not just fight, but
I want to see him score some goals.
Yeah. Well,
I want to see him in a shootout, 3-on-3 overtime. Put him out there and just let him body Austin Matthews open ice or something.
And it's too bad because there's a very low chance we'll see that, especially with him being on the Rangers, because it's so hard to crack that forward lineup right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll keep an eye on him and see if how he does. Maybe his time on ice improves, his numbers improve.
Yeah.
Because he's already been playing well at 21 years old. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So I think that kind of wraps up all of the main stuff we had on the page here. Before we get into some of these mock trades, we almost witnessed one of, I don't know if you heard about this, but we almost witnessed one of the biggest NHL trades ever, and it would have came out of completely nowhere. Did you hear about this?
I feel like I heard there was a decently big trade, but I do not remember. I don't think I saw any specifics on it.
So there was like no talks about this, no rumors. It came out that a deal was in place, like both sides pretty much agreed to it, and then it kind of fell apart last minute.
Right.
I don't know what the full deal was, but we almost saw Elias Pettersson go to Carolina.
Wow.
Which would have been absolutely insane. And this took place over about a 48-hour span. It first came out that the Canucks had offered Pettersson, I think it was 11 million per year for 8 years, so 88 million total. It sounds like it wasn't really rejected. It was just Pettersson wanted to focus on playing right now and the season before getting into it. And then the Canucks kind of took it as, okay, we don't think he wants to stay here long term. So then they started kind of checking the market. Carolina was really interested. It sounded like the two sides kind of have, came to an agreement on the deal and whatnot. And then all of a sudden now it sounds like Pettersson's willing to sit down and start talking that 8-year deal with the Canucks. And then the trade completely fell apart. And now it sounds like within the next couple of days, we're going to have a Pettersson extension in Vancouver. So, I mean,
yeah, wow. Was there any word on the what might be going back?
No, there was nothing discussed about what the return would have been. I can't even imagine what the return would have been for a guy like Elias Pettersson, especially the way he's playing right now. Like
the conversation had to have start with like Svechnikov and Slavin or something. Like he would instantly be the best player, and I don't think it's even particularly close on the Hurricanes.
Yeah, no. Like, I mean, like Aho is good, but Aho doesn't come close to what Elias Pettersson is. Yeah. Like realistically, not even close.
Even though they fill a fairly similar role at a different level, I think Aho's like one of the only guys they wouldn't move for that, just because he's got a long-term extension there, and he's been their leading goal scorer, or their leading point scorer for like 6 years.
Basically every year he's been there.
Basically. I think last year, I think he had since like 2018 or something like that. But I think last year Natchez might have outscored him. But
and I think Natchez would have been part of the
crazy
package. I think Natchez would have been one of the big pieces. Probably would have been Natchez, probably 2 to 3 first-round picks. Another roster player, and then like 1 or 2 of Carolina's best prospects or something. Like it would have been a huge package, and it would have came out of nowhere. But now it sounds like obviously that deal is not going to happen, and it sounds like Pettersson is going to stick around with the Canucks, and it sounds like it'll probably not for sure, but probably be an 8-year deal, somewhere between 11.5 to 12 million per year.
Yeah, which
it
makes sense for sure.
Yeah, I would have loved to know what the return, could have been or was going to be, because like what kind of price is Pettersson? He's one of the best centermen in the league. He's one of the best players in the league this season. Like I just can't even imagine how much you would have had to given up for him.
You know what? I think we can almost figure it out based on similar other trades that happened. Let's take the Matthew Tkachuk trade. So you're giving away one of your best players at the least in Pettersson. You get back one of their top and arguably their top defensemen at the time. So like I think you take like a Slavin or something like that. And then you get one of the other guy's top wingers. So you probably get Natchez. Natchez or Svechnikov.
I'm 99% sure that it would have been Natchez.
Yeah, I think Natchez, Svechnikov, and a first. Something like that.
I think it would have been more.
Natchez, Slavin, and a first. But even then, yeah, I could definitely see it being more. God, can you imagine having Pettersson, Aho down the middle locked up for like 6 or 7 years? I'm not sure how long Aho's deal is left, but that's a hell of a 1-2.
Yeah. Yeah, like it would have been nuts. I think it probably would have been something like a Natchez, like a Jack Drury, a Slavin or a Pesci, and then a first and a second, potentially even honestly could be 2 firsts. Like when you're getting a guy like Elias Pettersson, who I don't think he's reached his prime yet, and the way he's already playing, would have made Carolina instantly a cup favorite, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, they're technically considered a cup favorite. I don't think so. I think there's a lot of work they need to do still, but other than that, I think that kind of wraps up all of the current news around the league. I don't know if you had anything else before the mock trades.
No, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, Sheldon Keefe was yelling at the refs in the game versus Vegas over a trip that wasn't a great call, but like that's when you're watching it in slow motion. So I can definitely understand why the refs called it a trip. He was screaming at the refs, and the refs kind of, the refs will go over and they kind of take the screaming, and then the ref goes enough and starts to skate away, and then he kept yelling. He said, "Okay, you're out of here." And so he tossed him from the game. They got the penalty for it, and they also gave him a $25,000 fine afterwards, which pretty much everyone expected to happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's not a ton to say on it, Keefe's really got to get his temper in check. I'm pretty sure there was actually, you could see Nylander was like telling him like, shut the hell up. Like it looked like his players were more outwardly like, coach, what the hell are you doing, than you'd see on a lot of teams.
Yeah. I didn't really see the whole situation too much, but yeah. I think probably was kind of a trip in my mind, but
yeah, it was a borderline call, and either way, it was a 2-minute minor for tripping. Like we see phantom calls on that consistently enough that he shouldn't have lost his mind over it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
yeah. So I think really, I could have swore actually I had something else. Maybe not. Oh yeah. I mean, it's not big news, but I'm sure everybody kind of saw that the Green Men had returned to Vancouver. They had a big entrance, of a very Chris Sutter-like entrance at one of their most recent games. I think, it's a game against Boston, because it was when JVR got a penalty, and then he was trying so hard not to laugh in the penalty box when they made this big grand return and came down to the penalty box and immediately started just taunting him.
That's good. And it's so goofy that they're doing it this long after the first time we saw the Green Men. That was a long time ago at this point, but
it was a long time ago they retired.
Yeah.
So
that's fun to see. I wonder if they're like going to be back at it. Like, I don't know if they have season tickets or whatever, if they're going to show up a ton, or.
I got to imagine, if anything, it's probably just for the remainder of this season and the playoffs, but hey, you never quite know.
Yeah, they were doing their own thing, and then they realized, man, Vancouver's doing really well.
Yeah. So lastly, all we have left is some mock trades leading up to the deadline. One mock trade that I was kind of in the process a couple of days ago of putting together, I did scrap because I don't think it's going to happen now, being that, the Nashville Predators are 7 points clear in the wild card spot from the next closest team. So I don't think they're going to be trading UC Saros. I think if they do, it'll be in the off season. So I don't have a UC Saros mock trade because I really don't think we'll be seeing him moved now that Nashville's kind of in a solid spot in the wild card situation.
That's fair. Yeah, I think they came out fairly recently and said that they weren't going to move him either. While they're in a playoff spot, so
yeah,
that definitely makes sense.
So this first one, it was back and forth because we knew there was a deal to send Markstrom to New Jersey, like the deal was in place and everything. It fell apart because Calgary wasn't willing to retain on Markstrom's deal, which is why it fell apart. And it was either late last night or this morning, we now know that New Jersey is comfortable making a deal for Markstrom without Calgary retaining.
Right.
So this is so we're going back down this road because I think, again, if Markstrom does get traded, it's to New Jersey or nowhere else, right?
Yeah, most likely.
So I've got Jacob Markstrom going to the New Jersey Devils, and these are all ones I made up. These aren't like the other ones that were pulled from analysts or reporters or anything.
Right.
So this is Jacob Markstrom going to the New Jersey Devils for a 2025 first-round pick, a conditional 2024 second-round pick. So that's dependent on New Jersey's deal with San Jose. Either Calgary will get a second-round pick this year, or it'll be a 2025 second-round pick. They'll also get forward Alexander Holtz, defenseman Santeri Hotka, and Vitek Vanacek is going to Calgary in exchange for Jacob Markstrom with salary retained going to New Jersey.
Right. So they bring back Vanacek. That's just to make the goalie numbers work, as well as can't imagine they want Vanacek that much over there. Holtz is one of the big pieces there, and then a first and then a second in one of the next 2 years.
Yeah, and the first is a 2025 first. So not this upcoming draft, but the following.
Right.
And then Santeri Hotka is not really much, but Calgary's really trying to rework their defenseman, and Hotka's likes to play a little bit of a physical game a little bit. So I feel like maybe
is he an NHL player or a prospect?
Kind of back and forth. He was actually
he's a fringe NHL player this season.
Yeah, he was kind of a fringe guy with San Jose. He was part of the deal that sent Timo Meier to New Jersey. It was really just to make the contracts work. And then he's kind of been back and forth from the NHL to the AHL, depending on, the numerous injuries that New Jersey has dealt with. So, and I think that's a guy that Calgary would get, considering all the defensemen that they've already moved out and the guys that are still yet to be moved out.
Interesting. I definitely like that for New Jersey. They obviously they're not getting the retention they want, but they are,
like we discussed, they got the money. They got the money still.
They got the money. They need the goalie, and they're not giving up much in the way of what they're putting on the ice right now. The only thing that really affects them currently would be losing Holtz, but he's been great for them as a fourth liner.
Yeah.
But he's only a fourth liner for them. So I definitely like it on their end. I do like it for Calgary. I'm just wondering if it's enough. They want Holtz, and that's good, but Holtz is not worth the majority of Markstrom, and as good as a first is, I don't know how valuable that first is, like that's probably going to be a top 25, like a bottom 25 of the first round pick in a couple years. Like the Devils only look to trend upwards.
Mhm.
And also, you're drafting that with that pick, you're drafting a guy 2 years from now. And then who knows how long after that till that guy makes the NHL. You're building for a guy who might play for you in 6 years. Like,
Mhm.
so it's if I'm Calgary, I probably say no to this, but I think it's close.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at when I made it. I was like, eh, yeah, it's kind of a 50-50 to toss up. I think it really comes down to, you know, how much are they ranking draft picks over prospects, and then vice versa. Like, how
Yeah.
much do they rank? Like, what do they rank Holtz as? Do they view Holtz as a bigger trade piece than a first, or do they view a first bigger than Holtz? So I'm not too sure on that. I think, like, obviously, I think it is a better deal for the Devils, but I think if Calgary is set on moving Markstrom, I think that they probably would move Markstrom for this return.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If Markstrom had 1 year left on his deal, I completely do that if I'm Calgary. But the fact that he's got, what does he have, 3 years left?
He's got
Or
2 more after this one.
yeah, yeah, the rest of this year and then two more. They don't necessarily have to move him. So I think they could hold out for something better. But if they really want to get Wolf in there now and also want to, try and sell high on Markstrom because maybe they think, especially with moving out a guy like Tanev and maybe Hannafin, you could definitely see Markstrom's numbers go down soon. So
Exactly. Yeah.
if they're worried about that, I could definitely see Calgary taking it.
Not to mention that Markstrom made some comments. Um, I don't know if it was, again, I don't know if it was yesterday or earlier today, but he made some comments about how he's not happy with how the whole situation is panning out, and he said he thinks it could be handled a lot better from up top, referring to Flames management. So he's not happy with how this whole situation has been going on over the last 2 months now. So and this is after the Flames said that they're not going to be moving Markstrom, they're going to hold on to him. But now he makes these comments about how he's unhappy about how management's handling it. And then now New Jersey is okay with Calgary not retaining. So I think we're starting to trend towards that a Markstrom trade could end up happening, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we already at this start of the season we're kind of seeing a new era for the Flames. Just so many long-term guys had been moved out, but I think the team's going to look shockingly different come September next year.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Tanev, I think Markstrom probably gets moved, but they could keep him. I think there's a really good chance Hannafin's out at this point. I don't think he's
Oh, no,
resigning.
Hannafin's he's gone like by
Yeah.
the deadline. He's not staying there. Like,
Yeah.
they will trade him.
So like they're they're going to be a brand new team
Yeah.
from what they've been over the last 10 years uh, at the start of next season, and it'll be interesting to see how they do and what they get back because
Yeah.
like we talked about before, it looks like obviously not immediately, but for what they got for Lindholm, looks like a great deal for him. And if they can
Mhm.
get something similar to that, value wise for what they're giving up for the rest of these trades, they could be setting themselves up. And you know what? If they're getting a lot of stuff for the future like that, maybe they don't care if it's a 2025 first.
Yeah.
Maybe they're planning for the team to be good when, you know, Pospisil and Wolf and all these young guys, Connor Zary, are in their prime and
Yeah.
they can really make a run at it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. So, lot of moves will become with Calgary, and we're obviously going to keep a close eye on what happens there. Um, so the next one I have, this is a really fun one because I don't think this player. No, it's tough to say now because they're out of a playoff spot and they are quite a bit behind now. Um, this is a big one, and this is going back to Vegas, and obviously with Mark Stone out and that all that money of his not counting towards the cap.
Right.
And this is a big one. So St. Louis is trading Pavel Buchnevich, who
Right.
has this year and 1 year left on his deal, making $5.8 million. He goes to Vegas for David Edstrom, who was the very last pick in the first round last year. So in 2023, he was Vegas's first round pick. Along with that, a 2024 and a 2025 first round pick.
I mean, it sure does line up with what both teams' MO is, right?
Yeah.
Getting a guy who's looking to be a good prospect and then 2 first rounders, that's good value. That's exactly what St. Louis should be looking for, so a lot of these futures. And I mean, boy, does it does it fit exactly what Vegas has done since they've entered the league. Hey, we have no cap space. Fuck it, let's go get one of the biggest names we can. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense for him, especially with having that room on LTIR and the playoffs not having a cap. I could 100% see this happening, and I think both teams would take that and run.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people probably think like, well, you're basically trading 3 first round picks for Buchnevich. David Edstrom is still kind of an unknown. The 2024 and 2025 first, probably going to be very late first round picks again, potentially even 32 if you bring in Buchnevich and Mark Stone comes back magically fully healthy. And Buchnevich, the fact is he's on a great deal for what he's putting up for this year and next year. And his numbers would only get better playing on Vegas. Like you put him with a Jack Eichel, or even put him with Barbashev, who he knows very well from his time in St. Louis. Like
Yeah.
he would fit exactly what Vegas is looking for. And I think, even though Vegas is obviously a cup favorite, I think they're a top 2 cup favorite if they bring in Buchnevich to their team. So
Yeah,
I think
and you know
it's
what?
a deal both teams would take.
I think they would. And you know what? If I'm St. Louis, I say, you know what? There's 2 years left on that deal. Would be really nice to have him at 50% retained for another first round pick, or
Yeah.
an additional second even. Like if you're not using that cap space, get something
Yeah.
for it. Like absolutely. That's exact. Like Vegas would probably be excited to hear, hey, you guys are willing to retain for next 2 years? Like getting Buchnevich for even as low as 3 million per year
Yeah.
would be insane for them. So
And St. Louis doesn't even have to move him. If Vegas, like it sounds like Vegas is really interested in him,
yeah.
but
And
St. Louis
Vegas
could be
has
like,
no
hey,
problem throwing every single prospect and pick out the window for something like that. So
yeah,
I think they can ask for king's ransom, and I think they'll get it.
yeah. And if Vegas isn't willing to pay what St. Louis wants, St. Louis can be like, well, we don't have to move him. He's under contract with us next year, so we can hold on to him. Or if another team's willing to pay the price,
Maybe we'll
send
trade him
there.
to the Oilers, and then he'll sink you in the playoffs. Like,
yeah, exactly. So
I
this
like that deal a
one,
lot, though.
yeah. So this obviously is, this is kind of just taking some of the biggest names on the trade list and kind of doing deals with them, because some of the other guys a bit on the lower end, to name a few, like an Anthony Duclair, an Alexander Carrier, Nick Dowd, don't really know kind of what the value is for those kind of guys. Like it could be anywhere from those could be guys that could potentially be part of a 3-team trade. They could be guys that are shipped off for a third. They could be attached with something else for like a first. It's hard to tell with those guys. So
Yeah.
So again, another Calgary one, because we know he's for sure getting moved. We did have the one last episode with Noah Hannafin going to Tampa Bay. This one is Noah Hannafin going to Boston. And keep in mind, this is Hannafin is traded to Boston, and Hannafin has like agreed to an extension with the Bruins already. So it'll be a Hannafin to the Bruins with an extension.
Right.
I'm assuming for 8 years, probably.
Yeah.
For a 2025 first. I think you could do a 2024 first.
Boston
I-
has
I-
theirs, I'm assuming then.
Actually, maybe they don't. Hold on, give me one sec. I have a 2025 first down here, but a part of me is actually thinking they do have their first.
Normally
This
that wouldn't
year.
matter, and I wouldn't ask. But I think the Flames would love to have a couple extra first round picks this year, or at least one good one, because I think they would absolutely love to take projected 14th overall in the draft this year, Tig Iginla.
Yeah, like that thing
And
is
I think having an extra first round pick would make them feel a lot better about being able to do that and still taking another guy as well.
yeah, okay. So they don't have their first this year. It is a 2025 first is what they have. This was the issue I ran into in making this deal was the three teams that
Are involved in the trade.
the three teams I was looking at being Detroit, Boston, Tampa Bay. None of them have their first round picks.
Right.
So, which kind of made it a bit tough. Obviously, maybe another team could do it if Calgary's set on getting a first for this year. But the deal I have is obviously Hannafin with an extension to Boston for a 2025 first round pick. Boston's probably one of their top prospects, Fabian Lysell, who was drafted 21st overall in 2021, a 2026 second round pick, and Parker Witherspoon. Going back to Calgary, and this I based this one very similar off what Boston paid for Hampus Lindholm from Anaheim a couple years ago.
That's exactly the trade I thought of when you said that. This all comes, of course, with a 8-year extension for Hannafin, because man, like for how good that team has been, and they're still able to go out and get these great defensemen and sign them for long term is crazy that they're able to do that.
Yeah, and so I think the Lindholm one was pretty much kind of like a first and a second. I threw Lysell in there because I really do think that Hannafin is a bit more valuable than Lindholm.
I agree.
So basically, yeah, it's a 2025 first, 2026 second, Fabian Lysell, and then Parker Witherspoon, which is just a roster player to make the contracts work. For both teams there, and I think Parker Witherspoon. No, that was Tyler. Never mind. Parker Witherspoon wasn't ever with the Flames. That was a different Witherspoon.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad return at all. I'm wondering if the Flames could get more, but I don't
if
think
there's a bidding war.
I was gonna say it would have to take a nice bidding war, because like you can't add another first round pick onto that deal. Then you're getting a lot for Hannafin, and obviously it does come with the caveat of this team obviously gets him for the next 9 years, including an extension. But yeah, I definitely think there would have to be a big bidding war to get another first out of that.
And that's the tough part, Calgary's, and with trading Hannafin is I think obviously they would like a first round pick this year. The only issue is kind of all like the teams that I'm seeing that are in on Hannafin and interested. They don't have their first round pick this year. The only one is really Toronto, but I don't think Toronto's going to make the move for Hannafin because Hannafin isn't going to stay there. It would be a complete rental.
Yeah, I think they were out on him when they got Ilya Lyubushkin.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, and so it's like you basically got to look at Eastern Conference teams because I think like Hannafin wants to go in that direction. So you're looking at Eastern Conference teams that are American teams. There's not a whole bunch that Hannafin fits in with their team that has a first round pick this year. So I think with Hannafin, it's gonna be one of those tough ones where you're like, well, shit, like we might have to just suck it up and take a first for next year. And you know what? You never know what that first could end up being. So
yeah,
because I really do think Hannafin ends up either with Boston, Tampa Bay, or Detroit. I think like those three are kind of the ones that make the most sense, and they're the teams that are the most interested.
It's scaring me a little bit. I'm hearing a lot of talk. It sounds more and more likely he's coming to Tampa, and it sounds like the ask is a lot. And I mean, Hannafin's a great player. I would love to have him on Tampa, but I I think a large part of it as a Tampa fan is also it's been a long time since we've got to watch a. We've had some guys within the system come up and be great players for us, Ross Colton's and the like, but very few of them have been highly touted and then they make it. Like they just kind of show up out of nowhere. Isaac Howard is the first guy we've had and been excited about since Jonathan Drouin as an early pick. That's worked out for us.
Yeah.
And he definitely seems to be the centerpiece to a lot of these deals, and that makes sense value wise.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think if Tampa makes a move and gets Hannafin, like it obviously would have to start with Isaac Howard being the one of the big pieces. Obviously there'd be more, but it would have to start with him. And then again, it's like, if you're Tampa, do you really want to, in potentially even as early as next year, you have him coming in on 3 years of making like league minimum to a team that needs every inch of cap space like that. That's huge. And so do you risk, giving that up, especially when you've already got 2 great left-handed defensemen? And obviously Sergachev is done for the year, but going into next year and the year after, I just don't know how well Hannafin fits in there, but nonetheless, the interest is there from both sides. Obviously,
I do think Tampa really likes. I think they've been looking for that next big left D. I think they love rolling all lines fairly equally, and then having our top 3 defensemen be all on the left side and go 1, 2, 3, instead of having the top 2 on the top line and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I do wonder if they could maybe get it done with with their second biggest prospect currently in the system, Ethan Gauthier. If you do whichever first we have available next, I think it's 2025.
I think 2026. I think because they're 2024 and 25 is both.
This year is Hagel. Hagel and next one year. Of Hagel's. Is next year also from the Hagel trade? I know next year we definitely don't have ours as well.
I think Chicago. Chicago's got him. Oh no.
I think Chicago only has one left, and then the next one is from the Jeannot trade.
Oh, yes, Nashville. Yeah, that's right.
So I think it'd be the 2026 first, and Ethan Gauthier, and then you could throw in a Nick Perbix maybe, but even then, I think you still need probably more.
And the tough part is trading that 2026 is Tampa's 2025 is top 10 protected, which, not saying but anything can happen in this league. We've seen that. Say Tampa finishes with a top 10 pick next year, Nashville would get a 2026 first. And I don't know if Calgary's really shit, do we do a conditional 2026? It could get pushed back to 2027. I don't think that's something that they're really going to do, considering they're trying to do a quick retool on the fly. They're not committing to the full rebuild, nor can they really with some of the contracts they've got and the players. So
and that's why I think they do want sooner picks rather than later, which is why I think it would have to take Isaac Howard, which I definitely see Brisebois being open to doing to try and win in the another cup sometime in the next 4-ish years.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see if it gets done and what it could mean for a Stamkos signing in the offseason as well.
Yeah. So the last one I have here now is, and I think this one's more likely to happen now, considering Pittsburgh is 8 points out of that final wild card spot. They do have games in hand. They do have 5 games in hand on Tampa, who holds the last wild card spot. But I just don't see Pittsburgh making the playoffs anymore this season.
If they do, I don't see them doing much damage either.
Yeah.
It's crazy to write off a team with Crosby. At any moment he could turn it on and he could rally the boys so they could go on a run. But from what we've seen, doesn't look like it's happening.
Yeah. So this is the last one I have here, and this is probably the biggest I think, of the four that I have here. So Jake Gensel, and again, this one is also assuming there's an extension, going to the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for a 2024 first round pick, Oscar Olesen, who was drafted 28th overall by the Avalanche in 2021, a 2025 third round pick, and defenseman Bowen Byram.
I was hoping you were going to have Bowen Byram in there.
Going to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then Jake Gensel to the Avs, assuming an 8-year extension at, I don't know. I don't know what Colorado.
Whatever the number.
Yeah. 8.5, 9.
8.5 or 9 would be fair. It's Colorado, so it'd probably be 8.5 just because they're one of those teams, they get deals on players.
Yeah. And now I know there's going to be a lot of people who will be like, oh, why would Colorado trade by him? First of all, dude's career could be done at any moment due to those concussions and whatnot. Second of all, they've already got Cale Makar. They've got Sam Girard. Both of them are locked in for 4 years. They've got Josh Manson for 3 more years. He has a no trade clause. And then they've got Devon Taves, who just started the first year. Or no, he hasn't even started his extension yet that kicks in next year. So really, Bowen Byram is capped out at being a bottom pair guy. Yeah, and if he does move up, then are you going to pay, because who's their other lefties? Like, are you going to put Sam Girard making $5 million for 4 years as a 25-year-old on your bottom pair? No. Like, I think Bowen Byram's just kind of found himself as the odd guy out. Yeah,
for sure. That's a lot to get. Like, Jake Gensel is worth a ton, in my opinion. I think a lot of people are underestimating how much he would return, but 2 firsts, Bowen Byram, and what was the other piece? A third?
Yeah. The third is kind of one of those franchise mode extras. Oh, before we continue on with that, we actually do have a trade that just happened.
All right, breaking news.
The New Jersey Devils have acquired defenseman Curtis McDermott from the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for a 2024 7th round pick and forward Zakhar Bardakov.
Wow.
That deal just happened. Just broke like 30 seconds ago.
Man, when people are talking about this in 20 years, they're gonna be like, man, remember when that broke on the Stick 'em Up podcast?
Right. Exactly.
Huge moves. I do like that deal for both sides though. Like
I really do, because it sounds like the price for Gensel as of right now, if he is moved, is either multiple first round picks or a first round pick and like an A+ prospect, like one of the best prospects coming into the league. So instead of this, because Colorado obviously doesn't have that, it's a first, I would say like a B+ to an A- prospect. He was a late first a couple years ago. The third is kind of just an extra throw-in. And then Bowen Byram is kind of the big roster piece going back to Pittsburgh as part of their, kind of get shit fixed and then go in next year and try and win it all.
Yeah. I definitely think it would be good for them to have more first round picks, get some prospects built up, because they notoriously, outside of Braden Yeager, they have very, very few prospects. And that's fair, because they've had to trade so many because they're trying to compete. And, for a bit it worked there. They got back-to-back cups with Crosby still around. So
exactly,
it worked for a bit, but their core of Letang, Malkin, Crosby is getting very old at this point. And
I want Pittsburgh to stay where they're at, though. Like, I want them to do a little bit better, because like I really want their first this year going to San Jose and having it be like 11, 12, 13, which is kind of right where they're at right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you move out Gensel, could lead to some other guys getting moved, and they could just, tank the season and then because it was looking like at first San Jose was going to have 3 first-round picks because I thought Penguins were for sure, going to make the playoffs. I thought New Jersey was a lock to win the presents and then probably win the cup. So I was like, oh, there's 3 first-round picks for San Jose, but obviously now it might end up just being 1. But I think Gensel probably does get moved at this point now, though.
I think so. I think all it takes is, and it depends on how they play immediately, like their next 3 or 4 games.
Are
If
huge.
they win 4 games in a row and Tampa loses another 2 or something, like they might keep them. And I think there's a good chance that they do if that happens. But if they go 1-3 in their next 4 before the deadline, then I think they're pretty much forced to move him out, because unless they really want to re-sign him, which it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. Yeah, you got to get something for him. And if that would be an ask like that, I think that's a lot to get back from. So I would take it on both sides. The Avs having another guy who can play at that elite level is
like if your first line is Gensel, McKinnon and Ranton, that is gross.
That is filthy.
And if they don't go for Gensel, Colorado will for sure go for a second line center, someone who can be that second line center. I honestly could see them looking to San Jose and trying to get Mikael Granlund, who has this year and 1 more year, so it's not just a pure rental. But Colorado's got to do something to add to their forward, so it's not just McKinnon and Rantanen and Makar. The 3 of you have to do all the work for us throughout the playoffs.
Yeah.
With Pittsburgh, their season, in my opinion, hinges on tomorrow. We're recording this on the Friday. This is obviously isn't out at our usual time of noon. I was moving all day yesterday into a new place, so we just didn't really have the time to get it going. But so tomorrow, Tampa Bay plays Montreal in Tampa. Assuming Tampa Bay wins that game, Pittsburgh later that night plays Calgary in Calgary, where they're actually retiring Mika Kiprusoff's number 34.
Yeah.
If Tampa Bay wins, that would put them 10 points ahead of Pittsburgh for that final wildcard spot. If Pittsburgh goes up against Calgary, who's obviously not a playoff team this year, if they lose that game, like you're 5 days out from the trade deadline, and you're 10 points back, I just don't see a world in which you make the playoffs. I really don't. Like, it's possible, obviously, but is it going to happen? Probably not. So I think tomorrow really is it for Pittsburgh. Like if Tampa loses and Pittsburgh wins, okay. If Tampa wins, Pittsburgh wins, I think they're still in it. But if Pittsburgh loses, that's could be their season right there. And then I think for sure we might as well get an absolute haul back for Jay Gensel at this point.
Yeah, and there's a lot of teams that are kind of close to that wild card spot over in the East, and so only 2 points ahead of Tampa is Detroit, and Detroit plays the in division Panthers that day as well. Rangers and Maple Leafs play. The Sens are playing the Flyers. Like, there's a lot of interconference games happening that day, and if many of those go to overtime, so there's 3 points going out. If there's a lot of just bad bounces for who they need to win, and a lot of the teams, the Flyers win, kind of make some ground on them.
I guess the Flyers could catch the Flyers because the Flyers are at 69, but
the Flyers are technically points wise below Tampa and Detroit, but they are in the third Metro spot.
But even then, Pittsburgh would have to beat out the Flyers, the Devils, the Islanders, and the Capitals, which again is tough.
Yeah. So it's not looking great for them. That being said, they have played well this year. They are a plus 14 goal differential. Above them in the standings, the Capitals are minus 33. Above them in the standings, the Islanders minus 25. Above them, Devils minus 7. Above them, Tampa in the wild card at 0. And like I said, Pittsburgh's at plus 14. They've got a better goal differential than all of them. And maybe they got some blowouts against some bad teams I don't remember, but maybe they're not winning as many games as the numbers maybe suggest they should. So,
Yeah.
if anyone can turn it on and get the boys going at the right time, it is Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
It's it's a tough
It's
hill to
tough
climb
sledding. It's
with
tough sledding for them.
with about 20 to 25 games left in the season for each team. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of games and a lot of interconference games tomorrow. So I definitely agree that that would definitely be a massive turning point of maybe if you lose to them. And especially, they have a back-to-back tomorrow and on Sunday. They play the Flames and then they head up to Edmonton and play the Oilers
Yeah. So like,
after that. So you know what? If they get 0 or 1 points out of those two games,
they're done.
I think that's probably it. I think they wait until after the back-to-back and they look at where they are after that and they go, okay, we got to make the call. Or if they're still competitive, they go, let's try and ride it out.
And that's going to ruin Kyle Dubas because all he likes to do is go out and get the big name players, whatnot. He's not used to having to trade one away. And also like again, because I do think it's going to happen. If New Jersey gets Markstrom and then they add a defenseman, like obviously not Curtis McDermott, who they just did, but who could end up actually being a guy that Matt Rempe fights. Curtis McDermott is a big, strong defenseman. But like if New Jersey adds Markstrom and then a bottom pairing defenseman, maybe a top 4 guy, there's no way Pittsburgh jumps over them. No way.
Yeah.
So like it's really they got to walk away with 4 points this weekend.
Yeah, they got to walk away at minimum 3 points.
Yeah.
And
and I don't know, man.
I think by end of Sunday this weekend, at the start of Monday, we'll know which way the Penguins are looking to go. That being said, since Dubas has come on, he has said nothing, and of course he has to say it, but he has said nothing but we are trying to win. And I don't think he wants to start a rebuild there.
Well, you can't. And I mean, he kind of has to. Like when you go out before the season and you trade for Erik Karlsson, like you're very clearly all in on winning. And the fact Karlsson was willing to go there because he could see a chance of winning. And now if you're like, okay, well, now we got to rebuild. Now, like, I feel like as long as you've always got Crosby on your team, you have to be going for it. And then if you decide, you know what, we're going for a rebuild, then do you just, do you let Crosby, Malkin, Letang finish their season on a mediocre Penguins team? Do you trade them? Can you find a team that's going to take Erik Karlsson and his $10 million? It's a tough position they're in, but at the same time, they did get their 3 cups with that kind of main core. They did have that back-to-back. So
yeah, their future and a couple of the jobs in the management side might be in danger, but I think Penguins fans are pretty happy with what they've gotten as far as the on-ice product goes in the last 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I'm seeing a lot of people saying that this Curtis McDermott move for Colorado was to clear up cap space, so to open up a little bit of extra cap room. So we'll see what that might lead to if they're opening up cap space. Got to make you think that there's something that could maybe be in the works or something that they're looking towards.
Yeah, it looks like we're finally starting to see more and more teams say that they're officially looking for stuff, going towards the trade deadline. I know there's been quite a lot of things saying you literally Google NHL trades. The top thing is Oilers GM Ken Holland has lots of irons in the fire.
Yeah.
So and we know they were going to make some sort of move. You got to when you have McDavid and Draisaitl in the contract positions they're in, and they're in their prime, and you got to get something going.
Yeah.
As good as they have already been this year. The Stanley Cup, man, you got to make moves. You got to really make that push to get there. So we'll see what happens and who actually gets moved.
Exactly. So before we finish up here, before we jump into the last bit being the leaders, points leaders and standings, I'm just going to list off some of the guys who are at the top of the trade bait list for this year's deadline.
Okay.
And I just want you to tell me where you think they might end up going, or where you could see them at least being a fit.
Okay.
So we obviously kind of talked about Noah Hannafin in depth, obviously. Number 2 on the list is Adam Henrique.
I could see him going to the Avalanche.
Yeah.
If they don't get Gensel, I think he's probably going there.
I think either the Avs or the Rangers is my
the
two.
Rangers
for where
make sense. I could maybe even see him going to the Bruins, but I don't know if they need him necessarily.
Bruins could be a sleeper one, actually. I wouldn't rule out the Bruins because they could use an extra center. Jake Gensel is 3. We obviously talked about him. Yep. Number 4. Actually, we'll go back to Jake Gensel for a second. Do you think the Oilers could snag him?
I think they could. I think they'd have to clear out a lot of the cupboards to do it. And I know a lot of people are like, why would they do that? They need to get a consistent goalie. They need defense. I get that. But you can outscore your problems if you're good enough. Yeah. And Jake Gensel is a guy that can help you do that. And we know, and so many teams have the issue of, is Gensel going to be able to produce for us the way he did for the Penguins? Well, he'll be going from playing with Sidney Crosby to either McDavid or Draisaitl. So the answer is yes. We know he can play with these top tier players in the league.
Yeah.
So I would love that move for them. It would take multiple first round picks, probably at least one, and then probably, some of their biggest prospects, but I think they could get it done.
I think I agree. I think it would take multiple first round picks because they don't have that Bowen Byram type guy. Like sure they've got, prospects who are former first round picks, but you look at them, a lot of them are struggling in the in juniors or in the AHL, or even the ones that have gotten a chance to play in the NHL, they are struggling. So their prospects that should be their top guys and have high value don't really have that much. So it would take multiple
Philip
firsts.
Broberg would probably be in there, maybe. 22 years old, went 8th overall to Edmonton. He sounds like he's going to be pretty good. Maybe not 8th overall good, but I think he could definitely be involved if they're not sending out multiple firsts. But
the thing is with Gensel,
I think if Edmonton can get him, they should. Yeah,
I think the thing is also an extension, and then paying him that much, especially you got like Bouchard up in a couple of years, he's going to get a big pay raise. McDavid and Draisaitl, as much as they're making, they're going to get big pay raises. So, I wouldn't say Edmonton's out of the equation on Jake Gensel, but I think if Colorado's in on it, I think Colorado can offer way more than Edmonton, and Pittsburgh doesn't care who. Like if they're trading him, it's going to be the Western Conference, and they don't care which team it is. They're going to take the best offer, and I think if Colorado and Edmonton are in it, I think Colorado can offer up more. So
yeah, if push comes to shove and both teams are very serious, I think Colorado's got to win the bidding war.
Yeah. Number 4 on the list, Vladimir Tarasenko, who I think is pretty obvious he will be traded out of Ottawa, given them being horrific.
Yeah. And I could maybe see him, I don't think with an extension in place. I think probably with salary retained as well. I could maybe see him going to like a Carolina.
That was mine, was Carolina.
They seem to pretty consistently need some scoring wingers. Tarasenko is not what he's been in the past, but we know he can put up some numbers on the wing.
Well, and also like in the offseason, it was like pretty much a done deal that Tarasenko was signing with Carolina. I don't know what happened for it to fall apart, but like there's obviously mutual interest from both sides for him playing there. So I could very well see him being like, yeah, I'll go and join him for a playoff run. So I think if and a guy with Tarasenko, like Ottawa signed him for 1 year. It was either they make the playoffs with him or they trade him. It's not like a Jake Gensel or a Noah Hannafin, like where they don't want to trade him within the conference. They'll trade him to whatever team's offering the most, whether that's same division or not.
Yeah.
And I think Carolina probably like they obviously have interest. And I think if Tarasenko got asked, hey, where would you be comfortable going or where would you want? I think Carolina's probably near the top of that list.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. It looks like a match made in heaven, really.
Yeah. We'll just do probably the top 10 on this list here. Number 5, obviously Jacob Marchand. We talked about him. Number 6, right. Sean Walker.
Sean Walker is one of those guys that you could almost list every team that's playoff bound and it would make sense. Like,
yeah,
because I don't believe he's making a ton of money.
2.6.
2.6, very manageable. And he just plays such a good shutdown game, blocks shots like a madman. It's almost hard to say because like just looking at the standings here, looking at every team in the playoffs, like Tampa could use him, Detroit could use him. Like obviously he's with the Flyers. The Hurricanes are one of the few teams where I don't see him going because they already have a ton of defensemen. But like,
yeah,
Panthers, Bruins, Leafs, the Stars got Tanev already, so they don't need him. But like, I could see him go to a lot of places.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that it's hard because so many teams could use him. The thing I'm interested in is Philly.
He doesn't
obviously
take a ton to get, probably. Like, at
well,
the very
not
least,
after
he does take up a lot of cap space, and yeah, he's probably getting less than Tanev, and Tanev didn't even cost a first. So,
well, and that's the thing is Philly was probably like Danny Briere was probably punching holes in the wall because he wanted a first for Sean Walker, and now when Chris Tanev goes for a second-hand prospect, there's no way Philly can be like, yeah, a first for Walker, because I don't think any team would pay a first, seeing that they could have gotten Tanev for less. If I had to pick a team for Sean Walker, it would have probably actually been Toronto. But with Lyubushkin deal, I don't know now if they really make another move for defensemen. So if it's not going to be Toronto, Detroit, I could maybe see, but they've got a lot of like they'd have to send like an Oli Mata back the other way, and so I think they'd have to pay a little extra to get Philly to take on his contract. Dallas, obviously not.
Yeah, I could see him going to Tampa, but like, especially after the Tanev deal, I don't think they're gonna like what they're getting back. You know, it'd probably be a Nick Perbix and a third.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Edmonton looks towards him now that Tanev's off the market. If you can find a way to, you know, even if you got to offer the same thing, a first and Cody Ceci to get Sean Walker, like I could see that being a possibility.
And you know what? I like that move for both teams.
Number 7, Pavel Buchnevich. Oh,
you know, sorry, that Kyle. I've just wanted to bring up that Kyle Dubas freaking loves bringing old guys back. He loves that band the boys back together shit. And you know he'd love to bring in a Cody Ceci back in. Yeah. I don't even know if Ceci was. I think Ceci was around while he was in charge for a good bit in Toronto.
Yeah,
and he loves bringing guys back, so I could definitely see it.
Yeah. Number 7, we kind of talked about Pavel Buchnevich, but is there any other team that kind of speaks to you that you think could make a big push for him?
So we already talked about the Avalanche and the Oilers.
No, for Buchnevich, it was just Vegas.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah. For Buchnevich, that I can just picture him in a Bruins jersey.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the Bruins just like they can just like pick up whoever, They just go
And
up and
Boston has the assets.
they just randomly pick up wingers, defensemen as they please. And I mean, people probably say that about Tampa too. We grab random dudes all the time that we seem to have no business in getting, but
Good wording on that.
yeah, right. So I could see him going to a Boston though. I mean, uh, very similar to Tarasenko, he could go to Carolina. A good scoring winger. Hell, you know what? If they could make the numbers work, I'm sure a lot of the Rangers players and fan base would love to see him go back.
Yeah, and I mean, Rangers is a tough one because again, obviously that they refuse to trade their first this year, but I
Yeah.
think they've got pieces that they could move to get Buchnevich. So,
And maybe it comes down to how serious are you about winning the cup this year?
yeah,
Do you think St. Louis takes Lafreniere for Buchnevich straight up? Maybe throw in a third?
probably actually.
And you know what? Obviously the Blues are getting more potential value, but if the Rangers win a cup, I don't think they really care.
Yeah, well, exactly right. Number 8, Anthony Duclair,
The Duke.
the Duke.
He's a little bit lower in the lineup than some of the other guys we've been talking about. Honestly,
Yeah,
I think he might
there's a
actually be
pretty
closer to Tarasenko than
steady
some
drop
people would
off.
think.
I will say he has improved his trade value a bit with hurdling Couture down. Duclair's really kind of stepped up and had to take on a big chunk of the offense for the team. But again, he probably I think he might be one of those guys that's part of maybe a bigger deal. Yeah, he's only making $3 million though, so it is a very manageable contract that could even go down to 1.5 if you offer up the right price.
I could see him going to a New York Islanders if they're really looking to make that push. Maybe with some sort of extension, like a 4-year extension, kind of put together. So they kind of have him for the future as well. In theory, I like the idea of him going to Tampa. I do like his game, and he seems like the kind of depth player that we would love to have. But I don't think the numbers would work, especially since I don't know what an extension would look like at all for him. Like, I'm not sure. Is he staying? Do you think he's staying around $3 million? Is he going up to 4.5, something like that?
I think for an extension probably comes in at about around the 4.5. Like I could see a 4-year extension at like 4.5 per year. If I had to pick two teams, I wouldn't be surprised if the Rangers make a move to bring him back, and that could be part of a bigger deal that could see, Duclair going to the Rangers and back to San Jose would be whatever prospect, maybe 2 prospects, and then obviously not their first this year, but a 2025 first, and then you'd have to attach something, and then to include Barclay Goodrow in that deal. So Goodrow would go back to San Jose as well, but then that obviously clears that bad contract off of the Rangers books. So
that would be really nice for them to get out from under that contract.
And then
I was so happy for Goodrow and his agent when they signed that deal because
you knew it was an overpay at the time, but you can't. If you want to see a team overpay, first of all, it's the Rangers because
absolutely.
And second of all, it's like, when you see a player that you like and you're like, man, you know what, good for him for getting the bag that he shouldn't be getting.
If I'm a player in the league and I'm maybe a little hesitant on who my agent is and I'm in the market, I'm looking at Barclay Goodrow's agent because that guy's going to get you the money you want.
Yeah. Another team that I think could make sense, barring they don't get Jake Gensel, could be the Edmonton Oilers, because I think, if you've got a guy like Duclair who's got the speed with McDavid, that could be pretty. That could work out pretty well, but never know.
Obviously, I don't think you would like like the idea of the trade because it's a very close team. But what do you think about him going to the Kings?
The Kings, yeah, I could realistically see quite a few teams in the Pacific Division. I could see the Kings, and I could also see Vegas going for him. And I'm torn because I honestly think if you're going to trade Duclair, you need to get a decent amount back for him because he's made it clear he's willing to stick around on this horrible Sharks team as they're going through this rebuild. I think you can get him for a decent price, and all the young guys talk about how much they look up to him, and I I don't want to say daddy, but like it's
But it's
something along
giving
that.
daddy.
He's kind of taken on like a dad role with the
Yeah.
team for these young guys. Um, so I think if they can keep him for the right price, I wouldn't even be opposed to him staying in San Jose. But I think he's most likely he gets traded, and there's a very good chance that it could be a within the division trade, and that's the thing though. You look at Edmonton, uh, LA, and Vegas. I think all of them actually do have solid pieces that could be very very enticing for the Sharks. So I wouldn't hate it. Um, depending on what the return would be, I guess
Yeah.
would be a big part of
I
it.
we so rarely see it, like very rarely. And I wish we saw it more, even if it is a weird move. But like a guy who's like, I'm willing to stay here and I'd like to stay here. Um, I think it would be so baller for them to be like, if you want to come back, there will be a 7 by 4.5 waiting for you when you get back, and they trade him for a second and a third or a first or whatever he's worth, and
Mhm.
then they sign him back in the off season, and they've already got the contract ready. And I mean
I'd love
that's
that.
that's and obviously especially for the player that's so sketchy because like you don't know if that's actually going to, especially if you get injured. Uh,
Yeah,
but man, it would be so cool, and like I just feel like that would make a player such an instant fan favorite of like you're like, yeah, I'll get traded, especially if they're waiving like a trade clause and they're like, I'll get traded and they go somewhere else. And you get some assets back for them. And then they just come right back in the off season.
hmm
Like
yeah,
that
yeah,
that really shows you're loyal to the team. And obviously the team wants to keep you back. And you get some assets to boot,
yeah,
especially if you're taking assets from, the Kings or something for the Sharks case.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, Oilers could definitely see it happening. Uh, the only I could see it happening with Vegas. The only reason I don't is because they just love getting the biggest name possible, and
Exactly.
I feel like they're gonna get somebody that they should have no business being in talks with.
Yeah,
Uh,
Jay Gensel could very well go to Vegas.
yeah,
It's not out of the question. So what do I got here? Just a couple more names. Alexander Carrier, from Nashville. I don't really have a
I
clear indication of where he could go.
I was
I
gonna
could see
say
a Toronto, but after Labushkin, I don't know.
he he's not a massive needle mover, so it's kind of hard to predict. Um, if the Avs don't go in on a massive name like Gensel or Buchnevich or something like that, I could see I could see the Avs picking up, a couple guys instead of that one big guy. Pick up Carrier and then maybe a Henrique or a Frank Vetrano or something like that.
Hmm.
I could see them bringing two or three new guys in and shoving them all on the third or fourth line, just getting a bunch of depth.
Yeah, yeah. Like that's a thing is as I think any playoff team could be in the mix for Carrier. So I don't really have a clear indication. I think Toronto's probably still at the top of my list, but again, after Labushkin, it's tough to really say how interested they still are.
Yeah.
Um, just a couple more. Jacob Chikrin, which he has 2 years left, so there's no immediate need for Ottawa to move him. Could even be a a draft day move, so I don't know if he really even gets moved,
I
honestly.
was say in my mind, the answer is the Senators. I think he sticks around at least for another year.
At least the rest of this season, he'll be there.
He spent a lot of time not knowing where he was going to go, and I don't imagine he loves having more of that.
Yeah.
That being said, he hasn't signed a huge extension or anything, so if there's a spot for him there where he can make enough money to be happy, I think he's probably wanting to kind of put down some roots finally in the NHL.
Yeah. I really do think it's if he gets moved, it's trade deadline next year or at the draft or something. But yeah, I don't see him getting moved. Just two more here. Nick Dowd from Washington, who reportedly wants a first round pick for him.
Ooh, I don't know if they're getting a first round pick for Nick Dowd.
Yeah, and the only reason I could see them maybe arguing for that is because he is only making 1.3 million. He's a great bottom six center, and he is signed for this year and next year at only 1.3. So, and a good penalty killer.
He seems like one of those guys that he could go to a lot of teams that could use him on the third line, but I think instead he ends up going to a team that has a really good top six defensemen, and he kind of rotates in almost as a seventh for like playoff depth.
Nick Dowd?
Yeah, I could.
He's a forward.
He's a forward? Oh, I thought you said he was a defenseman.
Oh, you probably got Nick. You're probably thinking of Nick Seeler.
Oh, I totally am.
Yeah. No, Nick Dowd. Fourth. I mean, fourth. I would put him as a fourth line center. You can make the argument, he's a bottom six, but realistically, fourth line center, good penalty killer.
He's not playing on the third line.
Yeah, I don't know why he's even this high as he is on the list. Probably just because of his contract, but again, like
because I think any
playoff team is probably sniffing around him to kind of see what the price would be. But I don't think any team gives up a first for him.
Yeah, I think, Florida, Boston, Toronto, Rangers, Carolina, Philadelphia, like every one of these teams, it's like if they're looking to go deep in the playoffs, I could definitely see them picking him up as just more depth guy, good defensively, like Dallas, Jets, Colorado, Vancouver, Vegas, Edmonton. Literally all these teams. Maybe only Philadelphia is the only one there that I just listed that I wouldn't see it necessarily, and that's just because I think they're overachieving a bit.
Yeah, and if he does get moved for a first, I think it'll be like very identical to the Barclay Goodrow trade, where San Jose trades him and a third to Tampa Bay for a first, and that first obviously ended up being, the very last pick of the first round, 31 overall. So I could maybe see something like that being like, hey, yeah, we'll trade you Nick Dowd and our third round pick for your first. I could maybe see that happening because he does have that extra year on his deal after this one. But
I could see them getting a first for him if they're also willing to kind of send a pick back to kind of mitigate some of that. So they get their high pick that they want, but also not quite the full value of it because you're sending away a draft pick later.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one we'll do here before we go through all the leaders is San Jose's leading point scorer. Mikael Granlund.
2 years left on his deal?
Or yeah, he's got this year left and next year left on his deal at $5 million, which could potentially be retained because San Jose does have that one retention spot open. And I mean, a guy that's got 35 points in 45 games and is, I mean, I don't look into plus minus too much, but is only a -10 on a Sharks team that has a goal differential of -104. I think there could be some interest from some teams. And if I had to pick one, I wouldn't be surprised if Colorado is, because they really need to figure out that second line center spot that has been a big hole since Kadri left. So
Yeah.
I think if they miss out on Gensel, I think they might make a move for Granlund to kind of buff out that second line.
Yeah, I could see it. Definitely there. I think it might be a team that has two really solid 1-2 centers could go for it and have him be a fantastic third line center. An Edmonton if they're splitting up Draisaitl and McDavid. Maybe even like the Winnipeg Jets. I would have said Vancouver, but I guess they've already got Pettersson, Miller, and Lindholm. I assume.
Yeah, Winnipeg's got
Miller.
Scheifele, Monahan, and Lowry, so they don't really have.
Yeah, I guess they don't want to move Monahan down. He's been great for him so far.
Yeah, really, like the only team that comes to mind that I'm like, he makes a good fit is really Colorado because they're desperate for a second line center.
Yeah, it's hard to not say the same teams over and over because a lot of the teams that have the cap space don't have a ton of depth. Like the Colorados and stuff of the league, and they don't fit on the teams that have a ton of depth a lot of the time. So, especially those teams that don't have cap space because they have the depth. So,
Boston could potentially.
Yeah, I could definitely see them going to Boston.
They could use some center help.
Yeah, we've been saying it since, but Bergeron even mentioned retiring. That they're in the market for a center. I think they still are, even though they've been doing great this year.
Yeah, even though like Zach and Coyle have been good, you can obviously upgrade from those guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of wraps up just some of the bigger names on the list. I think we might do an early one next weekend, really kind of depending on how this weekend goes, all what happens there. But
yeah,
that kind of wraps up most of our trade talk leading up to the trade deadline for this season. And then all that's left is kind of going through the race in the standings and points leaders, where it's kind of crazy that we're not even at the trade deadline, and potentially even before the trade deadline day hits, we've already got a 50 goal score, and we could have 3 players at 100 plus points. Like that's just absurd. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's been an insane year for scoring in the league. We've talked about it a couple times. Scoring's going up in the league, and it only seems to be going up even more. But getting into that, the leading scorers in the league currently for points. In first is Nikita Kucherov with 104 points. In second, Nathan McKinnon with 100 points. And in third, Connor McDavid with 94 points. Starting to close that gap a bit there. McDavid's got multi-point games in his last like 6 or 7, I think. For goals, Austin Matthews, 53 goals before the trade deadline. In first, obviously. In second, Sam Reinhart with 41. And in third, Zach Hyman with 40. And for goalies with a minimum games played of 35, goals saved above expected, we got... should I go per 60? Yes, I should, because we have the minimum games played. Goals saved above expected per 60 minutes. That Connor Hellebuck is in first with 0.727. In second, Jacob Markstrom with 0.515. And in third, Thatcher Demko with 0.391. Hellebuck's pretty high up. I mean, he's almost double the guy in third. Like, it is absolutely his Vezina to lose. For save percentage, we got Connor Hellebuck in first with a 924, Joey Decord with a 919, and Sergei Bobrovsky with a 916 in third place. It's Demko has played very well this season, and he's played more average than bad as of late. He's
Mhm.
not. He's taken a small step back, but he's still probably going to be a finalist for the Vezina. But it was really a 2-horse race for the Vezina for a bit, and yeah, it's absolutely
Yeah.
Hellbucks to lose at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
yeah, that's all the stats I got there, except for the overall standings for the teams. Um, so for the 3 teams in each division for not the wild card, for the division spots for the playoffs, the Florida Panthers and Boston Bruins both have 84 points. The Toronto Maple Leafs have 76. In the Metro, the Rangers have 83. The Hurricanes have 78, and the Flyers have 69. Nice.
Nice.
In the wild card for the East, we have 2 other teams from the Atlantic. We have Detroit with 72 points and Tampa with 70.
And then
And
really
then,
only 4 teams that are kind of going to be contending with them, or in the
yeah,
hunt, I would say.
yeah, they're looking to come up on them. They've all got games in hand on both Detroit and even more on Tampa, but they're all 6 points back. They're all at 64 or lower. So uh,
Mhm.
they got the games in hand, but they got to win those games for them to matter.
Yeah.
In the
Oh,
Western
and those,
Conference,
those those teams being the Devils, the Islanders, the Capitals, and the Penguins, all
yeah.
um, respectively at 64, 64, 63, and then 62 points.
And you know what? I'll throw the Buffalo Sabres in there as well because they're at 60
Eh,
points. They're only
I
they're only
guess.
2 behind the Penguins. It's not very likely, but
Yeah.
they're 6-4-0 in their last 10, and that's better than every team above them until you get to Detroit. So,
Yeah. 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 Fair point.
in the Western Conference, in the Central Division, we have Dallas Stars with 81 points, the Jets with 79, and the Avalanche also with 79. In the Pacific, we have Vancouver with 83, Vegas with 73, and Edmonton with 72. And then in the wild card spot, we have the LA Kings with 70 from the Pacific, and the Nashville Predators with also 70 from the Central Division. It's a bit further out over in the West because the Flames, like I said, both the wild card spots are 70 apiece.
Yeah.
Below them is the Flames, Blues, and Kraken, all with 63 points. They're all 7 points out. Minnesota Wild with 62. Um, those are the only ones vying for a playoff spot at this point. I'm sure
Yeah.
Arizona was in it until they lost 14 in a row.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very exciting year for like pretty much every trophy race, the playoff race. Like the President's Trophy, you looked like it was locked up. The Vancouver Canucks had 10 points over every other team in the league a couple weeks ago, and then all of a sudden they lost a bunch of games, and now they are at
They're not even the
83.
top.
And yeah, the Panthers and Bruins both have 84.
And Rangers are tied with them at 83.
So the only trophy that's really locked up at this point, unless they either of them fall off a cliff, is the Vezina for Hellebuck and the Rocket for Matthews.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very exciting to see where a lot of those awards are going to land and who makes the playoffs.
Also, like, just looking at some of the potential matchups we could already be getting in round one. Like, if the playoffs, were to start today or like a couple days from now, we could be getting like Florida versus Tampa, which is always exciting. Boston and Toronto, like what more needs to be said on that? And then in the West, you have Colorado versus Winnipeg, or Colorado versus Dallas, or maybe even Winnipeg and Dallas, because they're all right in there. Like they're either tied or 2 points separated. And then the Pacific, probably we're looking at Vegas and Edmonton again. Like the first round is going to be one for the ages this year. It's starting to shape up. Like,
yeah, it's absolutely going to be fantastic. We're going to get a couple different matchups that we haven't seen too much lately. We're going to get
some big time matchups.
some big time matchup. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'd rather face Florida as a Tampa fan. I'd rather have them face Florida than Toronto or Boston in the first round.
Oh, okay.
which might be
Interesting.
psychotic. They are an incredible team. They're 9-1-0 in their last 10.
Yeah.
They shit rocked us a couple weeks ago, but
If there's anyone that's got their number, though, I think it is Tampa.
yeah, and boy, would it be nice to put up another playoff win against them.
Yeah, just add to the long list.
But yeah, that's pretty much all we got here.
Yeah, I think that covers everything. Like we said, we're pay attention to the games throughout the weekend. We'll keep up to date on any trade news or rumors, and then if we feel like there's enough put on the table this weekend, we might come back early next week with some more extra kind of deadline stuff. And if not, we'll have our I don't think we've really figured out how we're going to do our episode for next week, because the trade deadline is taking place on Friday, a week from today. So we're not sure if we want to do our usual upload at the same time on Friday, or if maybe we want to wait until the dust is settled from the trade deadline, and maybe something will come out later on the Friday. We'll kind of do an immediate recap of the whole deadline day. We haven't really figured that out yet, but I'm sure we will at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that covers everything for this episode today. All trade deadline talk, which we love to do because this is, trade deadline day is one of the most exciting days in all of hockey. I think the only other ones is, the draft, free agency, start of the playoffs, and start of the regular season. So one of the big 5 days in the NHL, and we will do everything we can to keep you guys updated with everything. And if you want to stay with those updates, you can follow us over on Twitter/X at SE Hockey, and we're also on Instagram at SEU Hockey. Feel free to throw us a follow on there, join in on the conversations, throw us mock trades, and we'll review them. But yeah, that covers everything for today. Thanks to everybody once again for listening. Catch you in the next one.